Okay, so today we're going to show you guys how to use your two-part press molds or multi-part press molds, depending on what you made. So I'm actually just going to show you guys actually how to throw slabs. How many of you guys have actually thrown a slab before? Or know what that is? A few of you, okay. It's one of my favorite ways actually to make slabs because it doesn't require any equipment other than something a flat, like hard surface. So I'm gonna put my molds down here and I'm just gonna throw out a couple slabs. And then I'm gonna apply them inside here. So this is one of the ways that you can introduce clay to your molds. Others just like start to build things inside. And you can still get that texture. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a little bit. But I'm going to just I'm going to make two slabs. I'm going to make one from each side. So I need to kind of guess how much clay I need. And because I've never used this mold before, it's just kind of a guessing game. So I think I'm going to need a lot. I'm going to just do like half the block. Alright, so I got a little bit of plaster here on the table that fell off of my mold. If you see any like little crumbs of plaster laying around, those have to go bye-bye. If I were to throw this clay down on that plaster and that plaster gets embedded in the clay, it could cause an explosion in the kiln actually, because plaster will retain moisture and it'll absorb the moisture from the clay and it'll never leave the piece, right? So that's how it really causes explosions. Moisture is what always causes explosions. Just get rid of that. It's probably not the best spot for this demo, but I'm just doing it because whatever. All right. So I'm just gonna start by pounding this out, just to kind of like the general shape that I need. One other thing you could do is if you have rolling pins, you can also use a rolling pin if you don't want to like smack the clay. A lot of people like to use rolling pins to kind of like flatten it out. So I'm just trying to see if this is about the right, yeah. So from here, this is called throwing a slab. So I'm just lifting it up, okay? And then I'm pulling this towards my body and letting the clay drag across the table, right? So it's kind of actually stretching it out a little bit. This is way more than I needed, so that's good. And I'm gonna rotate it and change directions. And I do this until I get to the right thickness. And you can see when I do this, it's about the same thickness throughout, right? So it's a really quick, easy way. Like if I don't have a rolling pin, you know, this is what I do at home in my own studio. Just throw these slabs real quickly. And when I'm picking it up, it's real important that you kind of like spread your fingers out, right? So that you have more surface area when you're picking it up. If you pick this up and it starts to tear, that means you're like maybe going too quickly. Cool. So yeah, all right. So now it's kind of getting to the point where if I start to pick it up, it might actually start tearing. So I'm gonna leave it like this. And because this motion really stretches the clay out, it could promote cracking in the piece when it's finished firing, or when it's firing, or even while it's drying. I usually like to take a rib and I'll just compress it. I'm not using any water here. This is kind of a stiff rib too, this like green plastic. And I do this in a few different directions to really compress that clay. So what this does is you know, the clay stretched out. You know, the clay platelets kind of like moved over top of one another. Now they're kind of like stretched and they're not bonded together very well. By compressing it, they've stretched out. By compressing it, I'm getting them back in touch with one another essentially. Okay. And it sounds very kind of like new agey, but yeah. Okay, so also have my filling knife here. Going to cut out a shape that's larger than this. So once I actually start to press it into the mold, it's going to stretch a little bit, and it needs to be actually bigger than the mold itself, right? I need it to actually go up past this wall here, or past where the flange meets the other side, by a good like 1/4 inch or so. So I want to make sure I have plenty. So I'll see, maybe I do this just to kind of start. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I don't leave any plaster in there on the table. So this will just get me started. Cut out that shape.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
When making your slab, pick a surface that is not slick, like some of these have plastic tops, laminate. You don't want that because it'll stick to that. The coarser, like this unfinished wood works great, and nothing works better than canvas.
Yeah, this canvas table is actually going to be, the canvas is getting replaced really soon. We have some other material because the canvas is wearing out. We're replacing it with what's called hardy board, and it's going to work a lot better than this actually. It won't trap dust. So, okay, now I've got this. I've already cleaned it with vinegar and water mixture, right? It's been sitting out, and little plaster bits keep breaking off, so I need to be really conscious of that, and I'm not letting that get into my clay. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay it down there. I've already prepped it. It's clean. So now I'm going to just press this in. So I'm kind of like folding it as I do this. Drop it in. And I'm gonna press it now into the mold. If you have like any old socks, you can fill those with rice. You can use that to kind of like pound on this. That'll help the clay go into all the little nooks and crannies. I don't have one of those, but I want to make sure I push this clay into all of the areas. So another reason why I left the slab a little on the thick, this isn't super thick. It's about 3/8 of an inch, almost a 1/2 inch. So you really need it to kind of like stretch into like the low-lying areas, right? Does that make sense? So you want to get all of that texture. And everyone's mold's different, so you know you're gonna have different concerns. Some of your pieces are really shallow, actually. I know Edward, yours is kind of shallow, so we'll have some other issues that we might have to like problem solve, but I really want to make sure I kind of get that into all the areas. Okay, now I'm going to take my filling knife. I'm going to go ahead and just cut this straight off at the bottom. And then I'm going to cut off the top of this wall, but I want to leave about 1/4 of an inch past. So I'm going to just kind of watch it as I'm doing it. got that extra clay. So I've got this side done. I'm gonna kind of force that in. Okay. I guess now that I know how much clay I'm using, I'll get by with less. I'm also going to throw a little slab for the base of it, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Go ahead and leave this out. I can reuse this for a different project. So every time I'm doing this, you know, I'm trying to keep this kind of square because my form is kind of squarish, right? Or the proportions are pretty equal. It's the height and the width are about the same. So I'm doing this to kind of keep it a little square. If you're making, I mean, you can make a slab for like several parts of yours, depending on like what your piece is like. But just because of the scale of mine, I'm doing 2 separate slabs because to make 1 slab for both of these would be a lot. I'm gonna dig that out. If I dig out any plaster, that's gotta go right into the trash. So same as this side, or same as the other side for this side. Really push it into those areas, especially the low areas. Looks like I'm kind of being a little rough with the plaster, but really I'm kind of supporting it, and you don't want to push on it too hard because the plaster walls that we're working with here, they're all about 1 inch or so thick, right? So they're still a little fragile. So you don't really want to pound on this too much. But you need to apply enough pressure so that the clay goes into all the detail. That's why like a little sock with rice in it is perfect. Or lentils or something like that. So same on this, I'm going to leave about 1/4 inch. You don't want it to be flush because you need to leave a little bit of clay here so it can join the other side. That makes sense? You have to score and slip in between the different sides. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm going to score and slip both of these sides, put it together, and then we'll pull it back apart. So I've got this handy little tool for scoring. If you've got a metal fork, those work really well actually. I've got one, but it's all covered in slip, so I want to do this first. Hey Ashley, how long, or not Ashley, Sienna, how long has this been going?
15 minutes and 39 seconds.
13 minutes. So, we'll have like a complete ceramic sculpture here in like less than 20 minutes.
Whoa.
Right? That's what's great about working with plaster and working with molds. So, it makes everything a little faster. All right, so scored both sides, right? See that? So who remembers what slip does? What's the point of using slip in between?
Gets into all the cracks.
It gets into all the cracks. It also does another important thing. What else does it do?
Helps the clay adhere to each other.
Yep, it helps the clay adhere to each other by what? By,
Unifying
yeah, so this like, it helps unify it, helps prep the clay at both junctures, or at both, on both sides, right, at the juncture, by also adding a lot of moisture right there, okay? So it helps hydrate that space on both sides. In fact, actually, I only need it on one side. Just want to make sure I have plenty of it though. So you only need to put it on one side. Make sure I have plenty of it. But yeah, it's goes into, you know, helps alleviate any possible like air pockets being trapped from the scoring, right? But it also like hydrates that space, so both sides can kind of like soften essentially, right, and join together really well. So I will like to sometimes just stand them up, but this is the first time I've ever done this with this is the first time putting this one together, so I don't want to mess it up because it's being videotaped. So I'm going to do this together. So and so this is my first time doing this one. I probably could have taken one of these walls down to flush with the flange. I'm going to press and squeeze at the seam here. You guys can kind of see inside here now. See that? So you can see a little bit of that slip kind of like squeezing out there in the seam, right? What I like to do, if you can reach your hand inside of your mold, I know a couple of you that might be a little tricky, but I like to take that slurry like this, just get rid of that. And also join those parts together if I can. Now this is kind of a thin spot, like my sculpture is kind of thin, right, narrow, so I can't get in between some of those parts, but I'm gonna go ahead and just apply a lot of pressure and see if I can kind of smooth that out. That helps join that seam together.
So you don't need to use oil soap this time for this part?
No.
It'll just come out on its own?
Yeah. The Murphy's oil soap, the mold soap, it's just used so that the plaster, when it's fresh, doesn't attach or stick to objects, right? And then once the plaster cures, you don't need that anymore. So, moment of truth. Let's see, I might just try to pull one side off. So now, yep, perfect. All right, so now while it's laying on its side, I'll try to pull this side off. If you start to pull off a side, and the clay starts to go with it and it's ripping at your seam, you might have an undercut, okay? And we can identify that. We can shave down some of the plaster in your mold. Or your clay is too sticky, it just needs like a few more minutes. But oftentimes you can just pull it right off. Alright, so, voila. So now I've got this extra part here. I can cut that off, or I can leave it. I decide I want it, rip it off. Let's see if we can get this other side out. Well, it's pretty soft, but I'd probably let this sit up in here more. I want to see if I can get it out. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab this side, put it back on here, and flip it like this. Let's see. Get it to come free from this other side. Another tool that helps pop your clay free from your mold is compressed air. So we've got a couple little places over in the glaze area, the kiln yard, that have compressed air. You can just squeeze the trigger and just it'll pop a little air in between and separate the two. So it doesn't want to come free from this side very well. So I might just let it sit for like 5 or 10 minutes. Try to wiggle it a little bit more. And then the last thing I want to do, after I do that and separate the two, I'm going to create a base for it. Big open spot on the bottom of your pieces makes it a little bit more fragile. So if you add another slab, so I'll just throw another slab and I'll sit this on top of that slab, trace around, and then attach it, slip and score, poke a hole in the bottom, and then I'm ready to let it sit, right? But if I were to just leave this open, put it up on the shelf to dry and be fired, it's really fragile down here at the base. It's easy to chip and break, essentially. But by adding a slab underneath this, it makes it much stronger, and it won't warp or anything like that. So I think I am going to let this sit, or I might actually take it over to the compressed air and just kind of like squeeze the trigger and just get a little bit of that air in between to help separate the two. If I identify any undercuts in my plaster, I can alter the plaster. So, cool, that's all I got.